Hey everyone. Ooh, my chair is really squeaky. Today we're going to read actually a very serious story, so I'm going to compose myself appropriately. It's by Roberto Innocenti, who's an author who wrote this really amazing story. I believe it's pronounced Rose Blanche because she's German, and so her last name would not have a CH hard sound, but actually a sound. So I'm going to pronounce it that way, but if you hear Rose Blanche, it's totally fine too. I'm just a little bit picky with my pronunciations. So I know you guys have already seen the cover, but I'm just going to give you one more close-up. And I bet most of you are probably predicting that this little girl in the window, probably our main character, Rose. Let's read and find out. It is a pretty serious story, so if you need to discuss it with me, or people in your family, or if you want to reach out and leave some comments, I am here for you. So we know it's historical fiction. We know it takes place in the past, during some important historical event, not just the past and the ordinary past, but something else is kind of going on. We'll read and find out more. My name is Rose Blanche. I live in a small town in Germany, with narrow streets, old fountains, and tall houses with pigeons on the roofs. One day, the first truck arrived and many men left. They were dressed as soldiers. Winter was beginning. Let me give you a nice close-up of the picture. And so you kind of see some clues in this photograph, in this illustration, that maybe indicate something is familiar or unfamiliar to you. Think about what people are wearing too. Now, the trucks follow each other under the school windows. They are full of soldiers we don't know, but they wink at us. They drive tanks that make sparks on the cobblestones. They are so noisy and smell like diesel oil. They hurt my ears, and I have to hold my nose when they passed by. So there we go, we see our tank. See if there's any other clues about the setting or the time period. Sometimes it seems things haven't really changed, but my mother wants me to be careful crossing the street between the trucks. She says soldiers won't slow down. Lots of times I walk by the river just looking at it. Branches float along and sometimes old broken choys. I like the color of the river. It looks like the sky. The trucks are fun to watch. We stand in the doorways that pass. We don't know where they're going, but we think they're going someplace on the other side of the river. One day, one of them stopped so the soldiers could repair the engine. A little boy jumped from the back of the truck and tried to run away, but the mayor was standing there in the middle of the street. Sounds kind of strange. There's a little boy in the back of a truck. He grabbed the little boy by the collar and brought him back to the truck. Then he smiled, the mayor, smiled at the soldiers without speaking, and they thanked him. The sky was gray. The soldiers climbed back into the truck, doors being shut, and it pulled away. It happened very fast. And I want you to pay close attention to the back of the truck where the boy was from. What are you noticing back there? Told you it was serious. I wanted to know where the little boy went, so I watched the truck until it disappeared around the corner. The street was crowded, kids were playing, there were bicycles and farmers' tractors all over. It was noisy, just like every day when school is out. But I walked on the sidewalk ignoring everyone, and no one saw me. So we're already getting some clues about who this Rose is. What word is kind of coming to your mind right now? She's pursuing something, she wants to know more, she's probably curious, inquisitive, maybe that's an even better word to use. Concerned. I walked for a long time, past the edge of town into the open fields where I had never been. The clouds were gray, everything was frozen. Sometimes I ran. I followed the tracks into the forest and found a clearing. And if you look very closely, there's a sign that says verboten, which means forbidden, or like you're not allowed in German. And if you look really closely at this photo right here, you'll be noticing something about the fencing. Suddenly, electric barbed wire stopped me. Behind it, there were some children standing still. I didn't know any of them. The youngest said they were hungry. Since I had a piece of bread, I carefully handed it to them through the pointed wires. They all stood in front of long wooden houses. The sun was setting behind the hills. It was windy. I was cold. Weeks passed by in the pale winter. Rose Blanche's appetite surprised her mother. She took more to school than she ate at home. All the bread and butter she could carry, even more jam and apples from the cellar. So you probably are making a prediction as to why she's carrying all that food. But I wanted to point out something else that's really interesting. Up until now, the story's been told from Rose's perspective, right? She says, I did this, and I followed them, and my name is Rose Blanche. Now, suddenly, the narrator changed. It says Rose's appetite and her mother. So now we have a third-person narrator. Isn't that kind of strange? Usually it's like the same narrator the whole entire story. So I wonder why the author went from saying from her perspective to now this outsider's perspective. I want you guys to pay attention to things like that. Authors don't just do that for fun. They do it for a reason. We're going to have to figure out why as we keep reading the story and talking about it all week. Rose Blanche was getting thinner. In town, only the mayor was staying fat. Everyone watched everyone else. Rose Blanche hid her food in her school bag and sneaked out of school early. Remember that mayor? Same guy who's wearing that armband? Pay attention to those pops of red. They're there for a reason. By now, she knew the road by heart. There were more children by the wooden houses, and they were also getting thinner behind the barbed wire fence. Some of them had a star pinned on their shirts. It was bright yellow. When the snow melted and the streets were very muddy, the trucks full of weary soldiers drove only at night, this time in the other direction. They were coming with no lights on from the far side of the river, and they never stopped. One morning, all the people of the town fled, carrying pots and burlap bags and chairs. There were soldiers among them. Some had torn uniforms. Some were limping. Some were in pain and asking for water. Rose Blanche disappeared that day. She had walked into the forest again. I wonder where everyone's going. What are they doing? Why are they leaving? Why are the soldiers leaving with them? Seems kind of opposite of what you expect. Fog had erased the road. Rose Blanche was hopping around the mud puddles to keep her shoes clean. In the middle of the woods, the clearing had changed. It was empty. Rose Blanche dropped her school bag full of food. She stood still. Shadows were moving between the trees. It was hard to see them. Soldiers saw the enemy everywhere. There was a shot. At that moment in town, some other soldiers arrived. Their trucks and their tanks were also noisy, and they smelled like diesel oil, but their uniforms were a different color, and they spoke a different language. Let's make an inference there. Who are these soldiers? What are they doing there? Why were the German soldiers leaving? Rose Blanche's mother waited a long time for her little girl. The crocuses finally sprang up from the ground. The river swelled and overflowed its banks. Trees were green and full of birds. Spring sang. Look closely at the photo. Think about the illustration. Think about where this spot is and why the author included it. And that's the end of the story. So we have to make an inference about what happened to Rose. That's not a happy inference. It's a very, very sad inference. The events of this story took place during World War II, and we're actually going to do a read aloud very soon called Number of the Stars that also takes place during World War II, which was in the 1940s in Europe and also in our country, but mostly in Europe. So we're going to keep learning about this setting and this time period, but hopefully this story kind of gave you some chills, maybe even like made you feel something a little bit unusual. This is a made-up story. Rose was not a real character, because it is fiction, but it's based on something that could have happened or could be true. So use this read aloud. You can listen to it as many times as you need to this week as you're answering your questions. Look forward to seeing all of your great work.